Welcome, everyone. Lai ke da lu da no jin ke zhu bun da da mi ke nan da ro wa kun ji zha na ji zang ba tan che ke du da ji ju den do. In the language of the gods, Nagas and Yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. And that's from the Sanchi Mulam, the king of aspiration prayers. And you'll hear many teachers before they teach recite something kind of really fast in Tibetan. And many times when you hear that, it will be this being recited. And this is something that Rinpoche always used to recite right before he started teaching. And I remember asking him, what are you saying? And he said it was a prayer to be able to speak in the language of all beings before the teaching starts, to really, as a teacher, kind of set up this perspective that you're not only speaking, to the people in front of you, because from a teacher's perspective, that's good and that's gaining virtue and helping people in front of you. But if you can expand that virtue to all beings and imagine that you are able to do that in all languages, it sets up kind of imprints in your mind, in the teacher's mind, in my mind in this case, to be able to actually in the future, as I become more developed, once I become a bodhisattva and have bodhicitta, to meet with all of these beings that I'm imagining that I'm doing so with right now. And it will be the imprints that I leave while doing things like this that will be kind of the foundations for, the conditions for my eventual ability to pull off this grand thing that I'm saying, may I be able to do this. So this is the reasoning behind doing this, is to try to be able to connect with as many beings as possible, to create as much virtue as possible, because the more beings that we connect with, the more virtue that we can create in each of those moments. And if we can make those moments so powerful with virtue by, trying to connect with all sentient beings, because we'll eventually need to learn how to put all of their needs before our own in terms of help. It really benefits our mind and begins to allow us to kind of in a contrived way act as if. So this is the reasoning. So welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. We're so fortunate to be here tonight. We're going to listen to Lama Tsongkhapa's foundation of all good qualities, source of all my good. Pabonka Rinpoche says, begging for a mountain of blessings. We see this continuous proclamation or exclamation that Lama Tsongkhapa is making, may I be blessed, please bless me. So this is why Pabonka Rinpoche says it's begging for a mountain of blessings. Please bless me to be able to, from the moment I read this stanza on, practice what's in this stanza. From right here sitting in this seat onward, may I be able to behave and act in the ways that each of these stanzas state, all of the meanings within them, all of the practices within them. May I be able to be blessed. Please bless me to be able to, do these practices and engage in these things. And when we ask for blessings, we know that there isn't some external kind of force that can wash away our negativities, take away our negativities, or give us their good qualities. We know that as that, the Buddhas don't wash away negativities nor remove suffering with their hands or transfer realizations. They teach the truth of suchness. So it's really, requesting a blessing to be able to be led to the truth of suchness. And the Buddhas are the most skillful beings who can spontaneously act for our needs in whatever capacity that is. So when we say, may we be blessed to be able to do this, may all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, those beings who are holy beings, be able to encourage me, help me along this path, intervene in ways that will help my mind mature, because they can spontaneously emanate in any way needed. So I'm begging for them to be able to bless me in a way that I continue to be able to connect with the Dharma teachings and be able to continue connect with them so that they'll show me exactly how I can see emptiness directly while, I'm a bodhisattva, how to get bodhicitta and become a bodhisattva. And while I'm a bodhisattva, eventually, we will all be bodhisattvas, how, to see emptiness and have that, those periods of ultimate bodhicitta occur. So that all being said, now you imagine that you all are here this evening for some reason or another. Most of us came to the Buddha Dharma with a lot of questions, not understanding really the way the world was working and why it worked the way that it did, and a lot of inconsistencies that, were given to us in terms of facts of why all of this is the way that it is. And, many of us showed up here in a lot of pain and looking for a way out of that pain in kind of just a mundane level, and came to find out that, a way out of just the pain that I was looking at from a day-to-day perspective at a gross level was, very gross, and that there were things that, everyone who seemed happy around me, there were problems with that as well. And I got to see that, even within the happiness of cyclic existence, there's this ever-present kind of pain. And it expanded my ability to understand what pain was and make my little world of pain and little ego grasping world of pain just kind of seem like what everybody else has to deal with, but just different varieties and tastes of that. So it kind of equalized pain and suffering in a way for me that was very, very profound. And so then let's think about that for a moment. The reason that we all are here tonight is to be able to get rid of suffering, to be able to have happiness, to try to figure out, how we could get as happy as possible. What would that take? And I think that all sentient beings, want the same thing. Don't you? Don't take my word for it. Think about these things for yourself. This is what we do. When we do analytical meditation, when we do meditation, we're thinking about these things. This isn't just for me to tell you. This is for you to think about. Like, okay, I want to be free from suffering. Okay, what does that feel like for me? What does it feel like when I experience 8 sufferings? What does it feel like when I experience the 6 sufferings? What does it feel like when I experience the 3 types of suffering? It feels really awful. And, what does it feel like when the people that I love so much experience those things? It feels really awful. Do I want them to have to experience that? No. How would they not experience that? The same way that I would go about not experiencing that. And that's engaging in a pathway. And when I look at these people that I just suddenly thought of that I didn't want to have pain, and thought, think deeper about, why is this? What is this? Why does this person mean so much to me? Why do I feel safe with them? I trust this person. This person would take care of me if I was vulnerable. And we begin to recognize that in other lives, other beings have done this job that we have this job description of that says loved one, person I love, but other people have done this. And when we look at beginningless lives, Buddha said that we're not going to be able to find anyone who hasn't had these intimate relationships with us of protecting us, taking care of us when we were vulnerable, nurturing us, being our mothers, being our fathers, being our wives, husbands, brothers, sisters. All of these relationships we've had with every single sentient being. And now, this continuum of consciousness that they have is manifesting in a certain way and is being housed in aggregates and looks a certain way and sounds a certain way and smells a certain way and is, kind of designated in a way by me as someone else. And then, I'm doing the same thing, with myself. And I'm making these same kinds of decisions. So we have to recognize that, everyone that we're having relationships with, to make this simpler and not lose track, is just merely manifesting as a result of karma, previous karma, afflictions, and contaminated karmas, afflictions, and seeds, which are bringing about rebirth into the place where I dwell, my samsara. And I'm having the same exact experience that they're having, where I'm, having karma, contaminated karma, seeds, and afflictions give rise to my experience now. And some of these are clicking, and I'm believing that now is the only time there ever was, and this is the only group of folks that I really have, are worthy of this name love. But we see even in this lifetime those roles changing. And then when we start to begin, we meditate on beginningless lives, and we see this moment's consciousness as a previous moment's consciousness, and we see all these karmas and conditions and possibilities, then we recognize that every sentient being we should care about just as much as we care about those that came to mind right away when we said, who do we love? Who takes care of us when we're vulnerable? Well, everyone. We've just merely forgotten. We've merely, because of our veil of forgetting our past lives, because of our, inability, we haven't progressed on the path far enough to be able to remember our previous lives. There's a veil there, ignorance, that's just a walling up our ability to see these other relationships. But when we start to meditate and we start to analyze these potential relationships, and then relationships, when we start to become more and more logical, we'll see that if we don't want the person that we love today to experience 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering, then it makes sense for us not, for us to want everyone to not experience the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering, because we felt the way we feel about the one that we love right now about everyone. We've just merely forgotten. And that's a big concept. And that is something that is so necessary I believe, to really start to get a grasp around why this even makes any sense, to even start, playing with from a perspective of analysis. So I think it's very valuable, and I encourage you all to think about these relationships, think about beginningless lives, think about your reaction to someone that you love so much and how you don't want them in pain. And what if you've had that relation? What if it is? What if it's true? What if it's true that the ant you're looking at, now I don't mean your ant, I mean the ant on the ground walking. What if it's true that that ant was just as kind to you and loved you just as much as the person you love right now who loves you? What if that's true? Your relationship to making sure you don't step on that ant becomes very, very different. Your mindfulness becomes very, very different. Your non-harm becomes very, very, ahimsa, your non-harm, non-violence becomes very, very active in a way that's different. If you can have this perspective, not just non-harm because doing harm's bad, non-harm because you have a wider perspective on you're harming someone who took care of you. You've merely forgotten. And then that allows you to then, when you see relationships turning, kind of not cling to that as being able to turn into full-fledged enemy, because you realize how silly it is and how much of a play it is that we're believing is the only play that there ever was. And until we start to recognize that this is a blip and that there's been a lot before and that there's a lot to come, we will be so sucked into this life, and there's no way we'll become spiritual practitioners. We'll just be addicted to this life, attached to this life, attached to the things that make us only happy in this life. And usually those are the things that we create non-virtue to go after, distract us so much from spiritual activities, and eventually will cause us, when we're about to die, to be thrown into the lower realms of cyclic existence, because they aren't the Dharma. They don't cause us, but you get my drift. You know, if it's focusing on something that you believe is inherently existent and it inherently has this value that you should be attached to, and it doesn't, you're just in ignorance the entire time. And that's what propels one again and again into cyclic existence, is self-grasping ignorance. And if you're not even trying to work at all with that stuff, and you're willing to just, you know, be like, it's just this life, you know, live it up. The ramifications of that are so great if you start to study, that it will make you readjust what you feel is important. And I think that the readjustment of what you feel is important has to happen if you intend on, you know, really having the persistence and really throwing yourself into the work that's going to be necessary and be so rewarding. You have to be convinced that it's a job that needs to be done, because there's things that give us more instant gratification out there. Most things. The Dharma is, you know, slow, steady, little gratifications, and most worldly things we can just kind of push a button, whatever that button is for our gratification, and it just turns it on. So it's so hard to convince ourselves that, you know, the gratification that we should be seeking is more of a long-term, real, you know, sustaining, you know, gratification, you know, the gratification of afflictive obstructions being removed and the obstructions to omniscience being removed. You know, the instant gratification that we're looking for when we chase after an object is just the suffering of change. So we're literally just chasing suffering, but expecting it to give us something that only liberation or, you know, Buddhahood could possibly do. So it's kind of funny when we look at everything that we do all day to make ourselves feel good, and none of them can actually really do it. Yes, in a mundane way, but there's a change in all of them. This just kind of this turnstile that just changes, you know, and they can't be trusted, whereas liberation Buddhahood can be trusted. So this is what we all need to do. So I've in keeping this in mind with these ideas, and knowing that, you know, when you become a bodhisattva, you will become more and more capable of connecting with all beings. And you have to become a bodhisattva to be a Buddha. Now you imagine that you bring all beings here as your guests to be able to hear the Dharma, because you know that all sentient beings need the same thing that you do to be able to have freedom from suffering and have infinite happiness and bliss. So imagine now that you bring all hell-hungry ghost animal, humans, demigods, and gods here to be your guests, to be able to hear the teachings, imagining that you're leading them in prayer. Imagine that everything that you're visualizing, they're able to visualize, and any things that are, you know, even beings that are higher along the path than you are, imagine that they're hearing exactly what needs to be heard, that the words that you're hearing may not necessarily be the words that they're hearing, because they may be needing to, you know, hear words that are, you know, much, you know, higher in terms of meaning, or more implicit, you know, more just different, because they're of a higher level. So imagine they're hearing the teaching. My point is, you know, imagine they're hearing a teaching at such a high level that I couldn't even give, but it's just happening through the blessing of the Buddhas. So just imagine now that you bring all beings here. This is the bodhicitta field. Imagine that you bring all sentient beings here, any beings that aren't enlightened, any beings that aren't Buddhists. Just bring all sentient beings here. So when we imagine the merit field now, we're going to imagine it as all Buddhas, because now we have the bodhicitta field that we're imagining. We're imagining all of the, sentient beings. And now the Buddhas we're going to imagine in the space in front of us. So now imagining, first, we begin with Buddha Shakyamuni. So imagine that you and all sentient beings, you aren't imagining you're doing it. You get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, imagining that all sentient beings get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. And we're going to do a little bit of breathing meditation and focal object meditation, fixed meditation, in order to calm our minds down and get us into kind of a more realistic place from which to practice Dharma, from to hear the Dharma, to hear the Lam Rim that contains all the stages of the path necessary to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So let's imagine now in the space in front of us, Buddha Shakyamuni, about arm length away, about the size of your thumb, beautiful, radiant, and glowing, about eye height, but static, imagining that static image. And while you're imagining Buddha Shakyamuni and only, in your mind focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni, also allow your mind to focus on the breathing in and out and counting of the breath. So you're holding Buddha Shakyamuni in this front generation form, again, static, but your also mind is not only just focused on Buddha Shakyamuni. So this isn't a sensory consciousness situation. This is your mind is focused on the things you're telling it to focus on. Here we have my mind, focus on Buddha Shakyamuni in the front, and mind, focus on breathing in and out and counting. That's it. And how will I know if there's a problem? What are problems that come up? Problems that come up are one side, excitement, scattering, mind going everywhere. That's one side of the problems. And another side of the problem is mind sleepy, mind dull, mind not radiant and bright. This is another side of the problem. So you don't want any of this to occur. If your mind's going blah, 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 it's not doing what you told it to do, because you told it only to focus on breathing in and out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. If your mind is really, really kind of dull and sleepy, you said, I want this brilliant and light and bright Buddha Shakyamuni. Mind clear. The mind just ready to just, just clear, just the clarity. The mind has to be very, very steady and also very, very clear and bright. So these are two qualities that you're looking for. And when the mind is scattered and excited, it's not steady. And when the mind is dull and sleepy, it's not bright. It's not illuminated. So we're trying to get rid of those, because when we get to shamatha is as calm as you can be and as clear as you can be. And fixed meditation is a practicing, and eventually we're in a section where we'll get into this more, to be able to get to the point where you're really fixed and have shamatha. So these are just little exercises to practice, to be able to learn how to do it. And then you can learn more about the stages of shamatha, and we'll talk about them in the weeks to come. So again, we're telling our minds to do this and not do that, and do it in this way and not in that way. So we have this spy in our mind that's called introspection. That's kind of just chilling out in the background, not loud, not a busy hall monitor, not like this, just in the background, checking out whether or not the mindfulness is holding the object. So that mindfulness is not forgetting objects. So now we said we're not going to forget this. So you have this little spy in our mind. It's back there watching to see if any of these obstacles to meditation are coming up. Any of this kind of scattering, or any of this kind of like darkening. The spy in the mind is kind of just like ready to set off like a bell to call mindfulness, to grab the object so that your mind is doing what you told it to do. So we'll get into more instructions, but it's relevant at this point in the practice, and you'll see. the union of calm abiding and special insight. Calm abiding is something that we'll talk about. And you're going to hear a lot of this language that I'm talking about and have been talking about in the beginnings of class about faults of meditation and antidotes of meditation and focal objects and so forth. So we'll talk meditation posture. We'll talk about that more in the future. So now we'll do a little bit of fixed meditation, and then we'll build the merit field from there. We've now got all sentient beings assembled around us. And now we're going to build the merit field, but calm our minds down by focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll build the merit field from there. 7-point Vairakana posture, focal object breathing in and out, counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. Really, really imagine that you feel all sentient beings around you. Take a moment to readjust that visualization. We're so fortunate to be here tonight, to be able to engage in practice together. Really rejoice in that. Imagine all sentient beings are just have a sigh of relief. Hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, gods, all the problems that we read about in these realms and we know about in our realm. Imagine that there's a sigh of relief because we've met with Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. We've met with Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni becomes animated and just looks into your eyes with loving kindness, just this compassionate look of the Buddha. Imagine, you know how your teachers look in your eye. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni is looking in your eyes and just so proud that you're here tonight, engaging in the stages of the path, the practice that will lead to the exact state that Buddha Shakyamuni is in terms of perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect wisdom, perfect skillful means, perfect power. Buddha Shakyamuni is thrilled we're here tonight. Now imagine that from that state of thrilled bliss, Buddha Shakyamuni now almost like just erupts and has been containing the entire merit field. It's called all in one. The entire merit field has been all within Buddha Shakyamuni. Now imagine that all the enlightened beings now begin to fill the space in front of you, either in the order like I'm saying it, imagining they're coming one by one as we're calling them, or just imagining that they're all right there in the space in front of you. Or you can just imagine almost beings and then name them and they become almost alive. However, there's a lot of different ways you can imagine the merit field manifesting. So I'm not trying to give some special oral instruction. I'm trying to just give you some techniques that I've heard. So imagining that the entire merit field now is starting to form in the space in front of you because Buddha Shakyamuni has been containing it. Imagining you see His Holiness the Dalai Lama on a very, very strong throne with snow lions, not going anywhere, remaining here with us. The Buddha of compassion remaining here on this Vajra throne that's so, so strong, looking into our eyes. Imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak on a beautiful lotus in the space in front of you. Imagine, you know how happy Rinpoche would be right now. If Rinpoche was in the room seeing what's going on, hearing that, oh, we're continuing to go over Lama Tsongkhapa's text and we just haven't stopped. And we're not going to stop. We're just going to keep going over Lama Tsongkhapa's text over and over and over again. And we're not going to stop. No matter what. We're not, unless I die or get really sick and can't talk, then I'll learn sign language. And I'll do that. if I can, I will be speaking about the Lam Rim until the day I die, if it's possible. And I pray that I'm able to do that. I really make aspirational prayers to be able to do that. And I please, bless me, Rinpoche, to be able to do that in the best way possible, and to meet with all of, see what you can do. See what you can do. I'm calling, on my guru to help with that, because this is really how I feel. And the more classes that I could teach, the happier I would be. And the more classes I could take, the happier I would be. So may that be so. So with that kind of, I spent 25 years with Rinpoche. Like, that's on my mind. Imagine how, Rinpoche would feel just knowing that about, because I can only think of it from my perspective. And then I think of it, Rinpoche sees other students are here, and that are allowing for this to go on, because it couldn't go on if other students weren't here. Just think about how happy that makes a Buddha like Khenser Geshe Wandak. Now imagining other enlightened beings like Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Demolocha Rinpoche, Khenser Lobsang Gyatso, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin La, Jeffrey Hopkins, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Chado Rinpoche, all of these holy beings who've done so much for us. We're so fortunate. Imagine them in the space in front of you. All these beings you consider holy, these beings that you consider enlightened beings. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya, Anasanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti, Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Muktasena, and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha, Lama Salimpa, Atisha, imagining all these holy beings, the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva, Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva, all these holy beings, Baba Vega, Chandrashita, Bodhibhadra, Kamala Shila, all of these really holy beings, imagining them in the space in front of you. Again, imagining Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, all of them right there. We're so connected to these beings. We've heard their teachings. They are part of our spiritual family. Now imagine the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Saraha and Matripa and Naropa and Tilopa, Naropa, Lotsawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa, all of these holy beings in these lineages. Imagining now that Lord Atisha is passing down the Lamrim lineage to Drone Tompa. Drone Tompa is there in the space in front of you in both lineages, combining all of these lineages for us to be able to understand the persons of three capacities. We're so fortunate. The old Kadampa lineages, those three old Kadampa masters, imagining these holy beings of the Nyingma, Padmasambhava, Sakya, Kunga Nimpo, Sakya Pandita, Kaju, beings like the Karmapas, the Galupa sect, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtup J, Joseph J, Penchen Sun Andrapa, Basu Chuji Jetson, Jayan Sheba, the Joseph J, Kirtup J, the Purbajok, Jetsumba, Seventh Dalai Lama, all these holy beings in the space in front of you. Highest Yoga Tantra deities, Performance Tantra deities, Action Tantra deities, 35 Buddhas, all the protector deities, imagining them all in the space in front of you. We're so fortunate to be connected to these holy beings. Now imagine that all sentient beings around you, again, bring this visualization back. Think about them. Think about them feeling this relationship, feeling this warmth from all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Think about you being in front of all sentient beings and them feeling this warmth from you, feeling this love and compassion from you. Just for a moment, imagine just a result on the path. Just for a moment, imagine that you turn around to all sentient beings and they feel that same love and compassion, that warmth from you, and you connect to them in that way. Imagine that you can bring them to the truth of suchness. So we're leaving these imprints in all of these different ways. Imprints to be able to learn from these Indian pandits, imprints to be able to teach sentient beings the meaning of what the Indian pandits have taught, So we're trying to leave all of these imprints to be able to become Buddhas as quickly as possible. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to make every moment of our day and night, Nisen Guntu, day and night, all of them, day and night, as a way to evolve. And the more and more we can say, in this moment I evolved, in that moment I evolved, the closer and closer, we get to that realization of renunciation, a desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, which is marked by day and night wanting to get out of cyclic existence. And if you have that kind of mind, that means each of your moments is really going to matter. And that's why renunciation is so important, is so that each of those moments matter and push you towards, in the case of renunciation, not in a, if it's just renunciation with wisdom, towards an abiding nirvana. So we're really trying to make these realizations because they're what allow us to, get to the goals. And then when we get to bodhicitta, we're trying to take in each moment a practice that makes us become a Buddha for the sake of others. So we're making really powerful moments when we have the combined realization to go with the moments. So if we're trying to learn more and more about the truth of suffering, then if we're trying to learn more and more about the truth of suffering, then that's making us want to emerge more and more, and then making it so that the moments of the day are closer and closer together where we're engaging in emerging behavior. So we're trying to figure out how to engage in emerging behavior in every moment. And the emerging behavior, whether are we trying to emerge from the lower realms? Well, we have to engage in every one of those moments if that's what we really want. And the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. Are we trying to emerge from cyclic existence altogether? If that's the case, then we're going to need to take every moment to engage in the teachings for beings of medium capacity. We got to figure out how to get each of those moments in line with the capacities. And then if we want Buddhahood, if we want to emerge from not only the afflictive obstructions, which keep us in cyclic existence, but we want to emerge from a lack of omniscience, emerge from not reliable, emerge from dualistic appearances, when we're not seeing emptiness, we want to emerge from that. We're going to need to make every moment an emerging moment somehow. So we have to make moments that are emerging moments closer together. And we have to practice the practices that make us emerge from what we want to emerge from. We want to emerge from the lower realm, small scope, all the realms, medium scope, and we want to become a Buddha, then great scope. We've got to be able to, in those moments, practice in order to emerge. We want high status. We have to practice, the 16 virtues and so forth, and ethics that abandons, non-virtue. And we have to acknowledge downfalls and go for refuge if we want to emerge. So each of our moments, we need to be practicing those things if we want to just be a small scope practitioner and emerge from lower realms. So we see how important each moment of our day becomes, because it's our mirror. What did I do those last 5 minutes? Was it emerging behavior, or was it just behavior that has nothing to do with small, medium, or great scope? Or was it at least something kind of working towards it, or am I working away from it? And am I working towards more of the same, or working away from more of the same? And we know that the only liberating path is emptiness. But the ripening paths are the things that we need to accumulate to be able to kind of combine them with the emptiness to be able to achieve our goals. So what are we doing in this moment? What are we doing in that moment? And that's what the Lam Rim is for. The Lam Rim is our mirror to say, what are we doing in this moment? Is it concordant with this, what it says in the text here? Because this is emergent behavior. This is how we could, be free from lower realm cyclic existence, or free from lack of omniscience, free from a lack of bliss. Is this what we're doing in that moment? Or are we doing something that doesn't look like any of that stuff, and it's stuff that's is just causing more 8 suffering, 6 suffering, 3 sufferings? So it's our choice. And the thing is we're going to keep making the wrong choice if we don't meditate. If we don't familiarize ourselves with why we need to make the right choice, we're just going to keep making the wrong choice, because we don't really believe the things that make us happy are suffering. So why wouldn't we keep doing those things? We're so satisfied with a blip on the radar of happiness that then costs like 500 blips of suffering. But we go for the blip, and we don't even think about the 500 blips of suffering. But Buddha did. Buddha does. And the more we're in line with the thinking of Buddha, the more we're going to have emerging behavior. The more we're going to be doing something with our moments that isn't stupid, that isn't dumb. If you're not doing spiritual practice, logically, it's dumb. It's fine. And I'm not saying I have renunciation. I do a lot of dumb things. But then when I do the dumb thing that's not spiritual practice, it's obviously dumb, because I'm not dumb. You get it? I think you do. All right. So now we have every being there can be in the universe. We have enlightened beings. They're all here. All those beings that no longer have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. They're all here in the space in front of us. And all the others, all sentient beings, are here and ready to be able to listen to this teaching, be led by you. You're imagining you're leading the beings, and they're hearing exactly what they need to hear. And we're going to recite the Heart Sutra. But before we do, I'd like to read a little bit of Meditation on Emptiness. We've been doing that by Jeffrey Hopkins. An incredible exposition work that he put together, meeting with so many different high lamas, and really put a pretty flawless book together in terms of how to meditate on emptiness, what are obstacles, and it really covers all of the different facets of the Buddhist path. But it's really good in relation to what the object of negation is. What are we trying to say when we say no self? We are not saying self doesn't exist. So many Buddhists get this wrong. So many people misinterpret Buddhist teaching and think there's no self. I just have to empty out my mind, and somehow this space is no self. Nothing is no self, when that is more dumb talk, because I am talking to you right now. Jeff is very clearly here speaking to you, but it's the way that I apprehend myself, and that the way that you are apprehending me as being objectively existent, intrinsically existent, inherently existent, new way of saying objectively existent, existing right in the object, that I exist. I have this inherently existent I right here. You're grasping at a self of person that you believe is right in the object right here, and I do too. So it's interesting. It's not saying that you're not here and I'm not here. We're saying that the way that you think I'm here and the way that I think I'm here isn't tallying with reality. So meditation on emptiness, we first begin with looking at what is this object of negation? What is the natural appearance of the self? And when we look at self, there's self of person and self of phenomena. Another thing that's misunderstood. self doesn't, when Buddha taught no self, the Buddha wasn't talking about only person. Buddha was talking about no self of person, no self of phenomena. So phenomena has self, no self when we investigate it. But the object of negation is a selfhood of person, selfhood of phenomena. So we can divide when we look at selflessness, selflessness of person, selflessness of phenomena. So now we're talking about the I, because it's close to me. It's the closest thing to me. So it's very easy for me to feel like I exist right in this here. I exist right here somehow, right within the object, you know. And then we have to analyze, well, what do I think the object is? You know, is this thing I feel exists right within the object of the I, something that is, you know, one with the aggregates, one with my body and my mind, you know, or form in my mind, or something separate. So we look at how this I naturally appears, and we see that it naturally appears as, you know, kind of this one concrete thing. Jeff, you know, call out my name and I'm all there. Call out my name and prick my toe and I'm Jeff, whose toe? You know, it's all kind of one kind of whole thing that when I'm naturally thinking about it, it kind of appears to me as like this objectively, inherently existent thing that is concrete. But then when I start to say, oh, well, what then there's this thing that jumps backwards and almost looks down at my hand. It's kind of weird. Like, I feel like now there's this thing that's separate. So is there this thing or not? And, you know, this is where the investigation really begins. We have to see whether or not the way that the I and other things around you exist the way that they appear. So what we were doing is we first got to the meditation about, you know, identifying, you know, what this naturally occurring I kind of would feel like. And we felt it. We had this, you know, they say, great Geshes say to meditate on this for a long time, like get this naturally appearing I. If you need to, you can't deconstruct something unless you know what you're deconstructing. So you have to say, okay, you have to create a hypothetical selfhood, a self, and say, okay, this is what it would be. And then you start to say, okay, if it is this, then it must be like this. Oh, it's not that. Well, it must be like this. Oh, it's not that. It must be like this. Oh, it's not that. And we begin to negate the ideas that we kind of have about things that are wrong. We don't even really know we have because they come so natural to us. So by using logic and reasoning, we can start to challenge the way things appear to us. And that challenge can only take place if you know your opponent. How can you challenge someone if there's no one standing in front of you? So you have to have inherent existence standing in front of you to challenge it. So you have to bring this naturally appearing I up and say, feels concrete to me, to challenge it. If you were challenging someone to a duel, you wouldn't be alone, right? You wouldn't stand there alone. You would need someone to duel. So here, when you're trying to negate something, you need an object of negation to fight. And here the object of negation is an inherently existent, objectively existent, intrinsically existent, separate I, stands up by itself, autonomous, independent, name all of it. Permanent, unitary, independent, autonomous, substantial, all of these things, you know. And we start to see whether or not it is. Is it work like that? Can this I be without the mind and body? Can this I be without the elements, without the earth, without the water, without the fire, without the wind, without space, without consciousness? Is the I, is it just, my body? No, my mind. I'm thinking. That's my body. It's physical. Mental and physical, there seems to be connections but separations. What if I'm just my mind? My mind isn't, I'm a boy in my case. My mind doesn't have gender. I need my body back to be a boy, Jeff. So we start to see there's a problem. And if you can't find this Jeff, in this case, that seems so solid to appear on its own, to stand itself up, to not need crutches, not need support, it's a problem. Where is it? Can't stand up on its own here, can't stand up on its own there, can't stand up on its own without it. And you start to see the way that it could stand up is through dependent origination, through collections being designated as this or that by a thought. But you don't come to that conclusion right away. This conclusion is like the surprise. It's all just dependent origination, causes and conditions and collections that don't have any nestness from their own side, just dependent origination, dependent originations of dependent originations that serve as basis for a designation. This is a flower. This is a pot. This is a microphone. This is a shoe, or this is a dog toy. You get it? Subjective thought designation on a basis. Nothing that existing right in the object. There's no shoe existing right in my slipper because my dog sees a dog toy. It's from their side. I see shoe. Lorinda sees something that needs to be put in the garbage immediately. It should have been thrown out a year ago. Just garbage, this awful thing. Wouldn't put it on a foot. Yeah. So what's going on? I love those things. How could you not? If that, I really feel like, man, those things fit that from its own side is so lovable. But from its own side, you think it's awful. And my dog can't put it on its foot and wear it as a shoe. So we say, okay, there's a problem. But that's the concluding kind of story that you come to, that it's a designation from the side of the subject. Not making it dependent origination. It's just causes and conditions, dependent origination. Making it in a way of your imprints are covering it, concealing it into the name you think exists within it as it is. So how do you get to this conclusion? How do you come to this crazy conclusion that things don't exist the way they appear to everyone, except the Buddha or someone who's in the direct perception of emptiness? Those are the only two that everything isn't appearing wrong to. Wow. A being in the direct perception of emptiness or Buddha. That's not most people I know. So this is a problem. So we have to undo this way that we see reality around us. And that undoing is undoing something that's so naturally occurring to us that it doesn't seem like it needs to be undone. It actually looks like it doesn't need to be undone and sounds crazy to try to undo it and starts to seem like there's some kind of disharmony then. But the only way that harmony can exist is through dependent origination. If things weren't empty, then it wouldn't be possible for the world to function, because everything would substantially exist and be permanent and be fixed. There'd be no subjectivity. There'd be no way that there could be this interpretation of object that's so different. There'd just be no way. How do we figure out that there's externality, yet I'm making it all? With the help of other people with collective consciousnesses that have some sort of way their mind is making it, and we then see these things together the way that we're seeing them. But the deer in my woods see it differently. We're all in the same place. We're in the same container, it seems. Why does everybody's container look so different? Yeah, different rods and cones, and fine. The eagle just sees like a mouse a mile away so clearly. The perspective is just so different. The ants, the grass, is like a tower. The tall. To an ant, the grass is tall. But then what's short? Well, the ant's feeling short, so the grass is tall. But to us, it's all short, because we're taller. But are we tall? There's a lot of people taller than me, so I'm short. Even these labels we can't figure out without relation. So we see all of this dependent origination. Try to find anything that could function without a dependent origination, without this naming. Try to figure out how the world could function if it was exactly the way you and only you thought it was, if that's in conflict somehow with others' perception. And if that is, either you're the only one right, or there's subjective experiences that are different depending on the sphere. An animal's sphere, a human sphere, a hell being's sphere, hungry ghost's sphere, a Buddha's sphere, a yogi's sphere. Our direct valid perception depends upon our ability to collect the information in a pure way. And each sphere has sometimes duller. And the Buddha's sphere is the most pure, perfect, omniscience. So the Buddha can see it all. We can see so little because we're so limited. We have this elimination that takes place. With all this stuff we see, we take it all in, and then our mind conceptually eliminates a bunch. So who knows what all of this stuff really looks like? We could really collectively engage, and we could see the subtle impermanence happening. It says that people could almost see a vibration happening because things are changing moment by moment, vibrating. They're giving off heat. Science says this. There's some sort of subtlety happening at all times. We feel like everything's so solid, but a yogi sees everything like this at all times. Not literally, but the yogi doesn't always just see that. That's not my point. But in their kind of way of thinking, some could see it even at a yogic level like this. But in their way of thinking, they start to see everything as very, very shaky. Death will come, nothing can stop it. We don't know when because lifespan's not fixed. Very, very shaky. This is what death and impermanence, these meditations do for us. They let us see things are not solid. They are shaky. So I think that's enough about this for now. But we're looking at the sevenfold reasoning, and the sevenfold reasoning is going to negate the idea that the I could inherently exist in terms of, part of the mind or part of the body, separate. So we're going to look at these seven, establishing that the I is not mind and body, establishing that the I is not different from the mind and body, So now you've hit a wall, and then there's some other things that it could possibly be, if you were, trying to come up, well, what was another way that it could be? Maybe the eye is, the base somehow. There's an eye that's a base, ready, and then there's mind and body. But then what we start to see that doesn't even make sense as this eye that's a base. What is that? Separate, you take away all the mind and body, then what do you have? You have nothing. You don't have a base. We don't believe that you can, there's not this idea of Atman. In Hinduism, you have Atman, where there's a separation, and then there's Atman. No. We need, the eye is labeled on the base of the aggregates. So we're seeing that the eye it's not the base of the mind and the body. And it's not that the mind and body are the base of the eye. Like somehow these, you will look into the points behind this, and that the eye does not inherently possess mind and body, like an owner. Like there's this eye that owns this body and mind of Jeff. There's a Jeff eye out there that owns all this stuff. And then establishing the eye is not the composite of body. Just somehow there's like all of these collections together, and then that's the eye. Because then that perishes, then the eye dies. The eye goes to the next life. Oh, that just freaked a lot of people out. Yes, the eye goes to the next life, and then the eye is designated on a new set of aggregates. Now I'm dying. Now I've died. Now I'm a bardo being that's shaped like an animal. Now I'm an animal. Now I have fur and horns, and I relate to myself just as vividly and as much as me as an animal in the future will, as I do as me now. And when I'm that future animal, I hope I'm not, but if I become this future animal, I'm merely going to be a collection that's labeled by this thought designating I and mine. I am Billy Goat. These are mine. The object of mine are my Billy Goat feet and horns and stuff. And Billy Goat will believe he, I guess in this case, is Billy Goat just as much as I believe I'm Jeff right now. And Billy Goat will cling to Billy Goat's aggregates as being his, just like I cling to my aggregates as being mine, something that mine possesses. And this grasping at this inherently existent I will be what causes me to take rebirth and become Billy Goat. And what will make Billy Goat take a rebirth and become Terry the God. This is the cycle of rebirth and the clinging to a name, an identity that occurs that then causes us to act and react in negative ways. So, and then is the eye the shape of the body? Am I just my shape and my color somehow? All right, so enough of that for now. We'll read the Heart Sutra. And I hope that you're getting as much out of the reading into emptiness as I am. I know it's late, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Not yet. We're going to do the Heart Sutra now. I should be on the Source of All My Good, but the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way, saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form is no other than emptiness. The same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity, no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no deception. The Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoa. 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 Te ata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. So that mantra again refers to the first gate, the path of accumulation, the second gate, the path of preparation, the third paragate, to the path of seeing emptiness directly, parasamgati, the path of meditation, and bodhisoha, to the path of no more learning. So path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. And these are the paths that we will have to go through as bodhisattvas when we become bodhisattvas in order to reach bodhisoha, Buddhahood. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas were rejoiced. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara jachandara samaraya ve de ada gade gade baragate barasangate buddhisoa babagacha sanchikaye middoji she badoji mebadoji shewadoji dragi baje medobeja danje chedingariye zo ha gerenda jaje shewa da medone beja dandwa dan tambajin dumon ton punson sonjoji tashi de jaden dade le jo. Make a mandala offering. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. Shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La Janja Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanji Drala Benja Sanje Jubasho Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La Janja Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanji Drala Benja Sanje Jubasho Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La Janja Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanji Drala Benja Sanje Jubasho. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. If you are attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay. I feel so good to be able to talk about that which will cut the root of cyclic existence. And that's the wisdom realizing emptiness. And we have to know what emptiness is. Buddhism talks about emptiness, 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 dependent origination. And very few have been able to grasp the very subtle meaning of it. And we're so fortunate to have been taught by great teachers who studied for decades and decades what dependent origination is, according to the great Nalanda masters, according to Buddha, according to the first, second, and third turning of the wheel of Dharma. And we're so fortunate that we've been presented with such clarity that we have a way to get out of cyclic existence. And it's only, through this figuring out what grasping is and figuring out with what the view is that we can achieve all of our aims. So, it's really important that we talk about this. And I feel like, we could have a Dharma class where we do really good job at, okay, we're going to, really intellectually understand this. And then next week, we'll really intellectually understand that. But I feel like the Lamrim tradition is such an alive tradition. And it's alive in the sense that we're practicing it and seeing how to taste the Dharma in our life. And when I have something that I feel I can share with you, or that I've, found made me taste the Dharma a little bit better, I feel like this is what it's all about. Because there's a lot of Geshe Larampas out there who can do word commentaries on these things, and also teach the practice perspective of it too. But I feel that Rinpoche was so kind to me to really just show me little by little how to put these things and practically apply them, that I hope that it comes through and my enthusiasm doesn't come off, or confidence doesn't come off as arrogance. It comes off as confidence and joy because of having such pure teachers and knowing it just makes such sense, and knowing that what I'm going to say isn't going to hurt you, isn't going to be something that is contributing to your acquired wrong understanding of how to live. And so many things in this life are just more acquired knowledge about wrong ways to live. And we acquire these even, with people with really good intentions, teach these things to us. Teach us to, that this life is all that matters. Teach us that there's some creator God that is in control. You're not in control. Teach us these acquired wrong ideas. And these things we have to get rid of. There's innate kind of wrong things in our mind that are just there. We see everything as objectively real. It's kind of just innately there. But then there's these acquired things. We have bad friends. We acquire kind of more views that are wrong. We acquire them. It isn't just about like acquiring a view that's the antithesis of selflessness. It's acquiring these views that aren't in the middle. And the middle is where you aren't heading towards more samsara in some way. We begin saying path at small scope, but that's still samsara. Path doesn't really start till we're talking about out. Truly, path is the Arya path, superior path, seeing emptiness path. And the only way that's going to happen is if you know what the heck you're trying to see. You're not trying to see nothing. You're trying to see an aspect that is nothing. An inherent existence that doesn't exist. You're trying to see that this inherent existence doesn't exist. This is what you're establishing, that the mode of existence that you think doesn't exist. You think it objectively exists. That doesn't exist. But the object exists. There's objects existence. There just isn't a, something that the object existing right within itself without a subject. Think about it. Could that object exist within itself without the subject? Without me in this case? Or someone, some me subject? Probably not. So I'm told, but we have to investigate this. And we're getting to the section, and I'm going to end in a minute. Sometimes it goes like this. We're getting to the section in the Source of All My Good, where we deal with calm abiding and special insight. And this is really where we separate. We say, okay, this is Buddha's teaching. This is Buddhist doctrine. We're starting to get into selflessness. In terms of special insight, because that's the wisdom. And in order to see selflessness directly, you have to have a mind that's calm enough. So you have to have calm abiding and special insight, and then unite these two things together, shamatha and vipassana. Not the vipassana that's really sounds kind of like shamatha to me. The vipassana, which is special insight, which is analysis, which is wisdom, analysis of dependent origination, analysis of using dependent origination as a reason for emptiness. Things are not inherently existent because of dependent origination. Things do not arise from themselves, not from other, not from both, not causelessly. We can't find an inherently existent self because there's no inherently existent self that is one with its parts, separate from its parts. And if you can't find an inherently existent self that's one with or separate from its parts, then you don't have an inherently existent self. You have to say there's a self there that's existing in some way that isn't inherently existent. And the existence is just through dependent origination, not through some identifiable thing that stands on its own. And when our minds are calm enough with shamatha and smart enough with special insight, we can start to unite those two together and start to get more and more towards the direct perception of emptiness that Shantideva says is the only way to freedom. So what else is there to do? If it's the only way to freedom, we better know what it is. And our minds better be calm enough to see it. So just not smarts isn't enough. Your mind has to be calm to be able to stay on an object for 4 hours and not move. It's what the great texts say. And once your mind can do that, and then your mind's super smart related to the nature of reality, then this mind that's super smart related to the nature of reality induces, you're thinking your mind's going to be calm, and then look at this wisdom. No, this wisdom somehow is so incredible that it induces this single pointed union. Wow, whatever that is. I've never done it, but I've seen folks who have, and they live differently, I'll tell you. So that's what the name of the game is. This is what differentiates the Buddhist teachings in terms of view, this view of selflessness. Non-Buddhist teachings have self. Buddhist teachings have, no matter where you look within them, the differentiation is these seals that talk about all composite things are impermanent, all contaminated things are in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are in the nature of emptiness and selflessness, transcending sorrow is peace. So you have to at least identify with the self, lack of a permanent, unitary, independent self of person to even be Buddhist according to view. Wow. If you don't hold the 4 seals, you aren't a Buddhist according to view. You can be a Buddhist by going for refuge. I get that. You go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But to be someone who holds a Buddhist view, you have to accept the 4 seals. And in there is selflessness. Okay. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And Lama Tsongkhapa's teaching on the source of all my good, teaching on all the different sizes of the Lam Rim, are just to show us how to not have problems in any of those 4 areas. Small scope shows us how to become spiritual practitioners. Medium scope shows us how to not be grasping at samsara and how to have the view. And then the great scope shows us how to have bodhicitta. So we see that those 4 lines and how to practice them in the teachings for beings of 3 capacities, in the 3 principal paths. And when you start to study more and more and more, it's just like so delightful to dance with each of these texts and say, oh, I know you. I know you so well. I don't feel at all shy. I know you so well. Oh, you're just like, your cousin over there who's saying the same thing, because you're all in the same kind of family lineage, the lineage of the Tathagata, of the Buddha. You're all saying like these same things. And when you learn to read the Buddha's teachings properly, and you see what Atisha came to show us, that there's no teachings that are contradictory. Everything's an instruction to practice. You can easily understand the conqueror's intent, and you won't abandon any of the dharmas. There's these crazy notions that, oh, only this one sutra is good. The rest of them should be tied to a tail of a dog and carried around. This is abandoning the Dharma. If this is your tradition, please re-look at this. Do not assert things that Buddha taught were wrong and were disgusting and were misinterpreted and this and that. Come to understand that the being taught to a variety of scopes, and the Buddha talked to a variety of scopes, and the Buddha never said things that weren't for the purpose of taking beings from their state to a state of perfection. The Buddha never said anything. So when you start to say, this one's better, that one's this one stinks, you're questioning an omniscient being, and you are not educated in the Dharma. You haven't studied the authentic scriptures. You haven't studied the commentaries. You haven't studied the Sanskrit tradition. You haven't studied the Pali tradition. You haven't looked at enough texts. You've looked at maybe one text, which is only a portion of the whole text, and you've made a decision based on something that somebody who wasn't very intelligent came up with, concocted, and sold to you as the pure Buddhist view, and you bought it hook, line, and sinker because you didn't do what Buddha said to do. Cut it and rub it and see if it tallies with reality and logic. And you could spend your whole life practicing something with blind faith, and then someone like me comes around, somebody who you think, oh, who is this guy who has authentic teachings and an authentic lineage, and then says something that makes everything you believe suddenly have an earthquake happen. And then you say, he's a jerk. You shut it off. Or you say, oh, he just didn't have this special instruction from his guru that I had. And I'm here to tell you that there isn't any sort of special magic other than engaging in the stages of the path in a very persistent way. There's nobody who's special, that doesn't need ethics, that doesn't need to practice renunciation and bodhicitta and the Four Noble Truths. Unless you have some incredible last life karma and you're about to realize something, and you'll know who you are if that's the case. Most of us aren't those beings. So please don't abandon the Dharma. And I see this all the time, where these judgments, yes, you can critique, and the tenet systems are all about finding the truth at the ultimate view, but the tenet systems were presented because certain sentient beings had ceilings in terms of where they could be established of their philosophical establishment. And the Buddha didn't want to go over their head and have them become nihilists. So you have to see this was all teaching to scope. And if you don't have the Prasangika view, if you don't know what the Prasangika view is, and you can't explain the Prasangika view, you are grasping at extremes of nihilism and permanence. I promise. I am grasping at extremes of nihilism and permanence. And that grasping causes me over and over and over to be born in cyclic existence as Bill the goat and whatever is next. Yeah. Tsongkhapa, thanks. I hope your teachings remain Prayer for the flourishing of Jitsongkapa's teachings, and pray that all of Buddha's teachings remain. I just feel so fortunate that, to have this presentation that was so concise. And I was not, my teachers were not satisfied with partial instructions. And they said, don't you be either. Prayer for the flourishing of Jitsongkapa's teachings. I feel like I don't mean to be but I feel so strongly about this. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma and infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Endraketa, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. His pure view free of eternity and destruction, his pure meditation cleansed of dark fading and fog, his pure conduct praised according to conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Learned since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings in the doctrine. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. May listening to the teachings of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hero's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he allied without clash the good paths of sutra and tantra. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by a method, the effect vehicle, heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayama, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, by the increase of the power of its patrons, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teaching of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva, who we're visualizing in front of us, inseparable from our root deity, and imagining that light rays and nectars are showering down on us and all sentient beings and transforming into white ohms, red ahs, and blue hums, and then transforming our impure body, speech, and mind and also into pure body, speech, and mind. So we imagine that the white ohms are purifying ours and all sentient beings' body, red ahs purifying ours and all sentient beings' speech, and blue hums showering down on us and all sentient beings and purifying our minds. Blue hums. Om Benzasato Zamayam and Ublaya Benzasato Zainavajita did the Meva Zutuka Vazubuka Meva Anuraj Meva Zavazini made wretches of comes to make them sure Kuruma Bhagavan Zavatataka Benzama Mimoka Benzabava Mahasamaya Sapa Home Ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lama. Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Jinjakalar Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong Jorama 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 Junja Kalaraja Rama Jadaji Junja Rudong Jong. Anyone who's experiencing obstacles to the Dharma or meeting with the Dharma may be purified by this mantra of Drapa Sundrit, the three wrathful protectors. Om Vajrapani Haryagriva Garuda Om Ve. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised the Supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Chen Rezig, here in person with us, breathing our air, walking our earth. We're so fortunate that he's here with us. May he remain in the pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains. You're the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful. Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Yatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And a prayer of supplication to Nangyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, my root teacher, spent 25 years with, passed away March 6, 2022. I wrote this March 6, 2023 as a supplication. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Oma Hom, Oma Hom, Oma Hom. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling jewels is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings of beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope this was helpful. I hope you apply these teachings to your life. I hope you own the Lamrim Chema Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment out in 3 volumes, Shambhala Publications. Please, if you don't own it, buy the first volume and start reading it. And I promise it won't let you down. See you later. Hope your mind is virtuous this week, everybody.